Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because something happened behind the scenes, something you didn't notice, something that didn't look important in the moment, something that felt like just another normal interaction, but for them, it meant everything. And listen to this, your soulmate didn't test you in a loud or obvious way. They didn't confront you, they didn't ask direct questions, they didn't put you in a situation where you knew you were being observed. Instead, they chose silence. They chose observation. They chose to watch who you are when you think nothing is being measured, when you believe there is nothing to prove, when you are simply being yourself without pressure or performance. And your heart needs this right now because that kind of test reveals the truth in its purest form. Not the version people show when they are trying to impress, but the version that exists naturally. And listen to this, this wasn't about catching you doing something wrong. It wasn't about suspicion in a negative way. It was about uncertainty mixed with feeling. Because part of them already felt something real with you, something deep, something they couldn't fully explain, something that felt different from what they had experienced before. But at the same time, they didn't fully trust it yet. Not because of you, but because of everything they had been through before you. Past experiences, past disappointments, moments where honesty wasn't what it seemed, all of that created a quiet wall inside them. A wall that didn't disappear easily. A wall that made them observe more than they expressed, question more than they trusted, hold back even when they felt something strong. And your heart needs this right now because that wall is exactly why this test happened. Not to hurt you. Not to trick you. But to understand if what they feel with you is safe. And listen to this, they created a moment. Something small. Something subtle. Something that blended into a normal situation so perfectly that you didn't even recognize it as anything important. Maybe it was a question, maybe it was a situation, maybe it was a moment where your response mattered more than it seemed. And in that moment, they paid attention. Not just to what you said, but how you said it. Not just your words, but your consistency. The way your actions matched your intentions. The way your energy stayed the same without shifting, without adjusting, without trying to create a certain impression. And your heart needs this right now because honesty doesn't show itself in big dramatic moments. It reveals itself in the smallest details. In the way you respond when there is nothing to gain, nothing to lose, nothing to prove. And that is exactly what they were watching. They wanted to see who you are when you are just being you. And listen to this. You didn't realize it, but in that moment, everything about you was being understood on a deeper level. The way you spoke naturally without overthinking. The way you didn't change your tone to impress. The way you stayed consistent even when there was no reason to perform. The way your actions aligned with your words without effort. And your heart needs this right now because that kind of honesty cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It does not need to convince anyone, it simply exists. And that is what made it powerful. And listen to this, at first, they were just observing. Quietly. Without reacting. Without letting anything show on the outside. But inside, something began to shift. Because what they expected was not what they saw. They may have expected hesitation, inconsistency, something unclear that would confirm their doubts or justify their emotional distance. But instead, they saw alignment. They saw truth. They saw something steady, something real. And your heart needs this right now because that realization didn't hit all at once. It built slowly. As they replayed the moment in their mind, as they connected your words with your actions, as they compared what they saw with what they had felt about you before. And the more they thought about it, the clearer it became. And listen to this, clarity like that is powerful. Because once someone sees truth without confusion, they cannot go back to doubt in the same way. They cannot pretend they didn't see it. They cannot ignore it. And that is exactly what happened to them. Because now, they were no longer questioning you. They were questioning themselves. Why they doubted. Why they hesitated. Why they held back from something that now felt so clearly genuine. And your heart needs this right now because that kind of realization goes deep. It doesn't stay on the surface. It reaches the part of them that they had been protecting, the part that wanted to trust, but was afraid to fully allow it. And listen to this, that is where the emotional shift began. Not from what you did, but from what they understood through you. Because you didn't try to prove anything. You didn't try to pass a test. You didn't even know it existed. And yet, you showed them exactly who you are. And that is what made it real. And your heart needs this right now because real cannot be staged. It cannot be performed. It reveals itself naturally, and that is exactly what happened. And listen to this, they may not have shown anything in that moment. They may have acted normal, calm, unchanged on the outside. But inside, something had already moved. Something had already shifted in a way they could not ignore. Because they saw you clearly. Not through doubt, not through fear, but through truth. And that moment, that small, quiet, unnoticed moment, became something they cannot forget. Something that changed how they see you, how they feel about you, and how they will move forward from here. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because what happened after that moment? After they saw your honesty without you even realizing you were being observed, didn't just stay as a simple realization in their mind. It went deeper than they expected, deeper than they were prepared for, and it began to change something inside them in a way that they could not control or ignore. And listen to this, once that moment passed, once everything returned to normal on the surface, they didn't move on from it internally. They carried it with them. They replayed it again and again, not because they were confused, but because they were trying to understand why it affected them so strongly. Because your heart needs this right now, before that moment, they were still holding back. Even if they felt something real with you, even if there was a connection they couldn't fully explain, there was still hesitation. Still doubt. Still a part of them that wasn't fully ready to trust what they were feeling. And listen to this. That hesitation didn't come from you. It came from everything they experienced before you. Moments where trust was broken, where honesty didn't mean what it should have, where things that seemed real turned out to be something else. And because of that, they built a quiet protection within themselves. Not something obvious. Not something they showed openly. But something that made them observe more than they expressed, something that kept them slightly distant even when they felt close. And your heart needs this right now because that is why that test even happened. It wasn't about you doing something wrong. It was about them needing to feel safe in what they were starting to feel. And listen to this, when they replayed that moment in their mind, when they thought about your words, your tone, your consistency, your energy, something inside them began to shift in a way they didn't expect. Because what they saw didn't just pass their test, it challenged their fears. It went against everything they had been telling themselves to stay guarded. And that is where everything became more intense. Because when someone's emotional protection is challenged by something real, it creates a reaction that cannot be ignored. And your heart needs this right now because they started questioning themselves. Not you, themselves. They began asking why they doubted something that now feels so clear, why they held back when there was no real reason to, why they were protecting themselves from something that actually felt safe. And that kind of realization doesn't feel light. It hits deep. Because it forces someone to face their own patterns, their own fears, their own emotional walls. And listen to this. They may have found themselves alone after that moment, in a quiet space where there was nothing to distract them, nothing to pull their attention away from what they were feeling. And in that silence, everything they had been holding inside began to surface. The realization. The clarity. The truth of what they saw in you. And also, the awareness of how much they had been holding themselves back from fully accepting it. And your heart needs this right now because when those two things meet, truth and self-awareness, it creates an emotional release that is impossible to contain. Not because something is wrong, but because something real has finally been acknowledged. And listen to this, that is when they broke down. Not loudly. Not in front of anyone. But quietly. In a way that only they experienced. Because what they felt in that moment wasn't just about you, it was about everything that moment represented. The realization that something genuine exists. The understanding that they almost missed it because of their own fears. The awareness that what they feel for you is deeper than they allowed themselves to admit. And your heart needs this right now because those tears were not weakness. They were release. The release of doubt. The release of fear. The release of everything they had been holding inside that no longer made sense once they saw your truth clearly. And listen to this, after that moment, something inside them became quieter. But stronger. Not empty, but clear. Because now they are no longer questioning what they feel. They are understanding it. And understanding creates a different kind of energy. It creates grounding. It creates certainty. It creates a sense of direction that was not there before. And your heart needs this right now because this is the moment where everything begins to shift from internal realization to external movement. Because once someone reaches that level of clarity, they cannot stay still forever. They cannot go back to how they were before. They cannot pretend they didn't see what they now understand